I picked up my daughter-in-law's coat from Mr. Wallace's dry cleaning, and the owner, a gentleman I'd known for years, pulled me aside into a quiet corner. "Mrs. Sterling, I found this in her pocket," he whispered, handing me a small plastic bag. "You have to get those children out of the city today," he said, his voice trembling. At that moment, I had no idea I was uncovering a terrible plan that would change our family forever. The sweltering heat of that December afternoon clung to my skin as I walked down the main street in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was lugging heavy grocery bags, feeling the sweat trickle down my back. Mr. Wallace's shop appeared on the corner, its faded sign swaying slightly in the faint breeze. I pulled out the wrinkled, dry-cleaning claim ticket Tanisha, my daughter-in-law, had given me earlier. "Mama Doris, can you run to the cleaners and get my beige coat? I've got meetings all day," she'd asked, giving me that hurried smile while fixing her hair in the living room mirror. I agreed without much thought. It was just another favor for my son's wife. The bell above the dry cleaner's door jingled when I stepped inside. The scent of fabric softener and hot steam filled my lungs. Mr. Wallace was behind the counter, a man in his 70s with his glasses perched on the tip of his nose and hands scarred by decades of work. I handed him the slip. "Ah, Mrs. Sterling," he murmured, glancing at the note. "I'll go get it." While I waited, I glanced at the wall clock. It was already past 5 o'clock. I needed to get home soon to fix dinner for my grandchildren, Isaiah and Ava, who were 7 and 5. My son, Marcus, worked late, and Tanisha always had commitments I never quite understood. Mr. Wallace returned with the coat, neatly wrapped in clear plastic, but instead of giving it to me, he looked around, making sure we were alone. His wrinkled face hardened. "Mrs. Sterling," he spoke, almost a whisper, "I need to show you something." Before I could respond, he took my arm with his bony hand and led me behind a curtain separating the front of the shop from the laundry area. The hum of the washers muffled our conversation. "I found this when I was checking the pockets," he said, pulling a small plastic bag from a drawer. My heart began to race when I saw the contents. It was a photo of my grandchildren playing in our backyard, but what froze me was the marking. Crude red circles drawn around their faces, as if done in anger. Next to it was a bank transfer receipt for a sum that made my eyes widen. It was millions of dollars. "When I saw this, I couldn't believe it," Mr. Wallace continued, his voice trembling. "I've known you for years. I couldn't just hand the coat back like nothing happened." I took the plastic bag, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "Mrs. Sterling, you have to get those children far away from here," he said, his eyes filled with genuine fear. "I'm not kidding. This kind of mark isn't good. I've heard stories." "What does it mean?" I managed to ask, barely able to articulate the words. "I can't say for certain, but those red circles, I've seen news reports about that. It has to do with human trafficking." The air grew too heavy to breathe. Human trafficking. My grandchildren. The room seemed to spin around me. "Don't waste time," he urged. "Take the little ones and get out of the city before sunrise. Don't tell anyone, not even your son. We don't know who is involved." I left the dry cleaners in a state of shock, the groceries now feeling like a ton of weight, Tanisha's coat folded over my arm, and the plastic bag burning in my pocket like fire. The street looked the same, cars passing, people coming home from work, the sun beginning to set. But my world had collapsed. I got home with my heart hammering. Isaiah and Ava were in the living room watching cartoons. When they saw me, they ran to hug me. "Grandma, did you bring ice cream?" Ava asked, her big innocent eyes shining up at me. I looked at those small faces, the same faces someone had circled in red. I forced a smile. "Yes, my love, we'll put the groceries away and then you can have a treat." My cell phone chimed. It was a text from Tanisha. "Running late, emergency meeting, kisses." I stared at the message, then at the photo in the plastic bag. The woman I treated like a daughter for 7 years. The woman who claimed to love my son. The woman who gave birth to these 2 innocent children. How could she be part of something so terrible? While I fixed dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, my mind worked frantically. I didn't have a car, and I hadn't saved much money. Where would I go with 2 children in the middle of the night? Who would believe me? If I told Marcus, he would confront Tanisha. And what if she was involved with dangerous people? I served dinner pretending to be normal, but inside, every nerve in my body screamed to run. "Grandma, why are you shaking?" Isaiah asked, watching my hands as I poured the juice. "I'm just tired, my love." After dinner, while the children were taking a bath, I called my childhood friend Celeste, who had moved to Atlanta, Georgia a few years ago. "I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's an emergency. Can I stay at your place for a few days with my grandkids?" Celeste didn't ask many questions. She just said yes. A 50-year friendship comes with that privilege. Trust, without questioning. I then called a cab, asking to be picked up at 4 in the morning. At midnight, with the children asleep, I started packing a small suitcase, some clothes, toothbrushes, Isaiah's allergy medicine, Ava's favorite doll. My brain felt numb, working on autopilot. I grabbed my phone and took a photo of the plastic bag's contents. It was the only proof I had, just in case something went wrong. Marcus called around 1 a.m. "Mama, I'm sleeping at the office. We have a big client tomorrow. How are the kids?" I bit my lip to keep from crying. My son, always working, always trusting that Tanisha and I would handle everything, completely unaware of the danger. "They're fine, son, sleeping. Has Tanisha gotten home yet?" "No, she sent a text saying she'll be late." There was silence on the other end. "Again?" he said, and I could hear the frustration. "Those meetings of hers are getting more and more frequent." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the sleeping children. In the darkness, I could only see the outlines of their small bodies under the covers, so vulnerable, so confident that the adults around them would keep them safe. 15 minutes before 4 o'clock, I gently woke them up. "We're going on a surprise trip, my loves," I whispered, helping them put coats on over their pajamas. "Now, Grandma?" Isaiah asked, rubbing his eyes. "It's nighttime." "Yes, sweetheart, it's a special adventure. We're going to visit Auntie Celeste in Atlanta." "And Mommy?" Ava asked, her voice sleepy. She knows we're going. She'll meet us there later." Another lie. How many more would I have to tell? The cab arrived right on time. I put the children in the back seat, buckled their seat belts, and put the suitcase in the trunk. Just as we were about to pull away, I saw the headlights of Tanisha's car turning the corner. "Go quickly," I told the driver. As the cab sped down the dark street, I looked back. Tanisha's car was pulling up in front of the house. She would get out, find the house empty, and then what would she do? Call the police? Marcus? Or her mysterious accomplices? The drive to Atlanta never seemed so long. Ava fell back asleep in my lap, but Isaiah stayed awake, watching the highway lights and passing trucks through the window. "Grandma," he said softly, "we're running away, aren't we?" I looked at him, surprised. Children notice more than we imagine. "Why would you say that, my love?" "Because you're scared. I can see it in your eyes." I hugged him tighter. "We're just going to visit Auntie Celeste. It'll be fun, you'll see." But as the cab cut through the night, carrying the 3 last members of my family I could still trust, I knew we really were running from a betrayal so deep I could barely comprehend it, running to protect what was most precious. And it all began with a coat at the dry cleaners. We arrived at Celeste's house as the sun was beginning to rise. She was waiting on the porch, an old robe over her nightgown, her gray hair a mess. When the cab pulled away, she hugged me without saying a word, just squeezing my shoulders tightly. The kind of hug that says, "I'm here for you." Her house was simple but cozy, an old 2-story home with a backyard and a kitchen that smelled of coffee and homemade bread. She led the sleepy children to the guest room while I collapsed onto a kitchen chair, exhausted. "Now, tell me what happened," Celeste said, setting a mug of strong coffee in front of me. You wouldn't run away in the middle of the night without a good reason. With shaking hands, I showed her the photo I'd taken of the plastic bag's contents. Her eyes widened. My God, Doris, that's— Yes, I interrupted. I found it in Tanisha's coat. The dry cleaner showed it to me. He said I have to protect the children. Celeste sat down heavily across from me. Do you think Tanisha is involved? Maybe someone put it in her coat without her knowing. I shook my head. There's a transfer of millions of dollars, and she's been acting strange. Going out a lot, getting mysterious calls, always with excuses about meetings. My cell phone vibrated. It was Marcus. I looked at Celeste in a panic. Answer it, she said. Act normal. Don't tell him where you are. I took a deep breath and answered. Mama. Marcus's voice was loaded with desperation. Where are you? I came home and no one is there. Tanisha says you disappeared with the kids. Marcus, calm down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The children are fine. We're safe. Safe? What are you talking about? Tanisha is frantic. She already called the police. My heart sank. The police. Of course, she would involve the authorities quickly. A grandmother kidnapped her grandchildren. The perfect story to paint me as the villain. Marcus, please listen to me. I found out something terrible. I can't explain it over the phone. You two are being monitored. Mama, you're scaring me. What kind of story is that? Tanisha thinks you had some kind of episode. The insinuation was clear. My daughter-in-law was suggesting I'd had a mental breakdown. Rage surged in my chest. Son, I'm perfectly lucid. I need you to come meet me alone without Tanisha knowing. It's about the children. It's serious. There was a long silence. Where are you? He finally asked, his voice lower. I can't say over the phone. I'm going to text you the address of a public place to meet. Come alone, Marcus. Your children's lives depend on it. I hung up, trembling. Celeste squeezed my hand. Do you really think the phones are tapped? I don't know, but I can't risk it. Not if Tanisha is involved with dangerous people. Isaiah appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his eyes. Grandma, I'm hungry. I forced a smile. We're going to make a really good pancake breakfast, sweetie. While Celeste fixed pancakes for the kids, I texted Marcus, setting up a meeting at the food court of Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta at 2 p.m. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I tried to act normally around the children, who were delighted with Celeste's backyard and the fat cat that lived there. But every noise startled me. Every car that drove down the street made me run to the window. At 1:30 p.m., I left the children with Celeste and took a bus to the mall. I chose a strategic spot in the food court where I could see all the entrances. I ordered a coffee I couldn't drink. My stomach was tied in a knot. I saw Marcus arrive 15 minutes before the agreed time. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since I last saw him, just 2 days ago. Deep, dark circles, unshaven beard, his shoulders hunched with the weight of worry. He spotted me and walked quickly in my direction. I stood up, ready for a hug, but instead he gripped my arms tightly. Mama, what did you do? Where are my children? They're safe, I replied, keeping my voice low. Sit down, I need to show you something. He sat down reluctantly. I took out my phone and showed him the picture I had taken. I found this in Tanisha's coat. The dry cleaner gave it to me yesterday. Marcus took the phone, staring intently at the image. I watched his face change from anger to confusion, then to an expression I couldn't interpret. What are those circles? He asked, his voice barely audible. According to Mr. Wallace, it's a mark used by human traffickers. Marcus, I think Tanisha is planning to sell the children. He shook his head vehemently. No, that's absurd. There has to be an explanation. Tanisha would never. She loves her kids. Look at the transfer amount, I insisted. Millions of dollars. And how long has she been acting strange? Late meetings, business trips, always on the phone with people you don't know. I saw doubt growing in his eyes. Marcus worked so much, he trusted so blindly that he never questioned his wife's increasingly frequent absences. Even if it were true, he stammered. Why did you run? Why didn't you come to me first? Mr. Wallace told me not to trust anyone. We don't know who is involved, Marcus. What if Tanisha is part of a larger network? Marcus ran his hands over his face, trying to process what he was hearing. "I need to see my children," he finally said. "I need to make sure they're okay." "They are. But before I take you to them, we need to decide what to do. If you confront Tanisha, she'll deny everything. She might even convince you that we need more concrete proof." "What proof?" "This could be anything," he said, pointing to the photo on the phone. "It could have been planted. It could be a misunderstanding." I expected that resistance. No one wants to believe that the person they chose to share their life with is capable of such betrayal. "Marcus, did you never suspect anything? Did you never see anything strange?" He was silent for a long moment. "There was a safe," he finally said, "in our bedroom closet. Tanisha said it was to keep jewelry, but I never had the combination. And lately I've seen strange movements in our joint account, large sums being transferred out." My heart quickened. "We need to see what's in that safe." "Mama, that's invading her privacy. We are talking about the safety of your children," I interrupted, more harshly than I intended. "If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to Tanisha on my knees, but what if I'm right? Could you live knowing you had a chance to save them and did nothing?" I saw the internal struggle in his eyes, the love for his wife against the worry for his children. Finally, he nodded. "Tanisha is at the police station now, giving a statement about the kidnapping. The house is empty." "Then let's go." We left the mall and took a cab back to Charlotte. The entire journey, we stayed silent. Marcus stared out the window, lost in thought. I prayed silently that I was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation for everything, but deep down, I knew. Those red circles were a death sentence for my grandchildren, and I would do anything to save them. The cab dropped us 2 blocks from Marcus's house as a precaution. We walked quickly down the familiar streets, which now seemed laden with invisible threats. The 2-story house where my son had built his family appeared before us, silent as a tomb. Marcus opened the door with trembling hands. The inside was exactly as I had left it the night before. Isaiah's toys scattered on the carpet, Ava's coloring books on the coffee table. There was a strange stillness, as if the house knew we were about to expose its secrets. "The safe is in our closet," Marcus said, heading up the stairs. I followed him to the main bedroom. The king-size bed was messy, likely from Tanisha's desperation upon discovering our disappearance. The closet was spacious, with Tanisha's expensive clothes meticulously hung on one side and Marcus's simple suits on the other. In the back, hidden behind a row of shoes, was a wall safe. "Did you never try to open it?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "Tanisha was always very reserved about some things. I respected that." I looked at the safe, the digital keypad blinking, awaiting the combination. "Do we have any idea what the code is?" Marcus sighed thoughtfully. "She uses the same password for almost everything. Our wedding date." He keyed in 6 numbers. The safe didn't open. Maybe the kids' birthdays. More unsuccessful attempts. I looked around for a clue. On Tanisha's dresser was a framed picture of her with a man who wasn't Marcus. They were smiling, too close to be just friends. "Who is this?" I asked, showing him the photo. Marcus frowned. "Tyrone, a coworker of hers. Why?" I took the picture frame and turned it over. There was a handwritten date on the back. 1208. "Try that date," I suggested, handing the photo to Marcus. His eyes widened when he saw the note. With hesitant fingers, he keyed in 1208. A metallic click. The safe opened. Inside were several stacks of money in different currencies, passports, not only for Tanisha, but also for Isaiah and Ava, with fake names. An envelope contained 3 plane tickets abroad, just for Tanisha and the children. Marcus's name was nowhere to be found. But what froze me was a folder. Marcus opened it, and there were more photos of Isaiah and Ava. On all of them were those red circles around their faces, and next to them was a document that looked like a contract with exorbitant values and terms that turned my stomach. "Oh, God," Marcus whispered, sinking to his knees. She was going to sell them." I touched his shoulder, unable to find the words to comfort him. How do you comfort a son who just discovered the mother of his children planned to sell them? Suddenly, we heard a car pulling up in front of the house. We ran to the window. It was Tanisha getting out of a car we didn't recognize. Beside her, a tall man in a dark suit. "It's him!" Marcus said, his voice strangled. "Tyrone!" Quickly, Marcus took photos of the safe's contents with his phone. We grabbed some of the most incriminating documents and closed the safe, leaving everything as it was. "Let's go out the back," I whispered. We crept silently downstairs. Through the kitchen window, I saw Tanisha and Tyrone entering the front door. They were arguing, their voices tense. "We have to find them," Tanisha was saying. "The transfer has already been made. If we don't deliver the children in 2 days, we're dead." "Calm down," Tyrone replied. "We'll find them. Your mother-in-law can't have gone far with 2 kids. Marcus gripped my arm so tightly, I almost cried out in pain. His face was pale, his lips trembling. For the first time in his life, I saw my son completely broken. We slipped silently out the back door, hidden by the hedge. We walked quickly until we reached a busy avenue, where we caught a cab back toward Atlanta. On the way, Marcus remained silent, looking at the photos on his phone as if he still couldn't believe it. Finally, he spoke. "We need to go to the police." "We can't just walk into any precinct," I argued. "If Tanisha is part of a larger network, we don't know who might be involved. We need someone we can trust." Marcus nodded, running his hands over his face. "I have a college friend who's a detective in Atlanta, Detective Henderson. I'll call him." The call was brief. Marcus didn't go into detail, only saying it was a family emergency and he needed Detective Henderson's help. We arrived in Atlanta 2 hours later. Instead of returning to Celeste's house, we went straight to a small diner downtown. Detective Henderson was already waiting for us there, a strong man with a graying beard and sharp, attentive eyes. "Marcus," he said, hugging my son. "Thanks for coming," Marcus replied, his voice exhausted. We sat at a secluded booth. Marcus showed the photos of the safe's contents and recounted the entire story. Detective Henderson listened carefully, his face hardening with every word. "Those red circles," he finally said, "are a known marking of an international human trafficking ring. We've been investigating this group for years, but they're slippery. We rarely get concrete proof." "And now?" I asked, feeling a chill in my stomach. "Now we have to act with extreme caution," Detective Henderson replied. "If what you're saying is true, Tanisha and that Tyrone are just pawns in a much bigger operation. We need to set up a sting to catch them and hopefully reach the higher-ups." "And the children?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking. "They have to stay hidden until we resolve this. They can't go back home or stay in an obvious location." I told Detective Henderson about Celeste, and he agreed that for now, it was the safest place for Isaiah and Ava, but he suggested an additional precaution. "I'm going to assign an undercover officer to stay near the house, just as insurance." We left the diner with a plan. Detective Henderson would activate a small, trusted team to investigate Tanisha and Tyrone discreetly. Marcus would stay with me and the children at Celeste's house, and I would have to keep being strong for all of us. When we arrived at Celeste's house, Isaiah and Ava ran to hug their father. Seeing them together, Marcus embracing his children with desperation, as if fearing they would disappear at any moment, broke my heart. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Ava asked, touching Marcus's face with her small hand. "It's because I'm so happy to see you," he replied, forcing a smile. That night, after the children finally fell asleep, Marcus, Celeste, and I sat in the kitchen. The full reality of the situation finally settled upon us. "How could I not see it?" Marcus murmured, his hands gripping a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. All the signs were there, the sudden trips, the secret calls, the inexplicable money. How could I have been so blind? "You loved her," I replied simply. "Love sometimes blinds us." Celeste put more water on to boil. "The important thing is that you found out in time," she said. "Now you need to be strong for the children." Marcus nodded. but I saw a pain in his eyes so profound that I doubted it would ever fully heal. It wasn't just Tanisha's betrayal. It was the unimaginable horror of knowing the mother of his children was willing to sell them. That night, lying in the makeshift bed in Celeste's living room, I couldn't sleep. I relived moments with Tanisha over the years, family dinners, the children's birthdays, confidences exchanged. Had everything been a lie? Or did she change at some point, seduced by promises of wealth and a different life? And how would we explain this to the children when they were older? How do you tell Isaiah and Ava that their mother had betrayed them in the worst way possible? Through the window, I saw the faint light of a squad car parked discreetly on the corner, the officer Detective Henderson had assigned to protect us. I felt a pang of gratitude amid the desperation. At least we were no longer alone in this fight. I finally fell asleep, exhausted, only to be awakened by the sound of my cell phone. It was an unknown number. With a racing heart, I answered the call. "Hello," I whispered, trying not to wake the others. "Doris." Tanisha's voice was cold, controlled. "I know you have my children." I froze, unable to respond. How did she get my number? I had changed the SIM card. "It's no use pretending," she continued. "I'm calling to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" I asked, moving silently toward the porch so as not to be overheard. "Bring me the children tomorrow. No police, no Marcus, just you and them. In exchange, I guarantee nothing will happen to you." I felt my blood turn to ice. "And if I don't accept?" There was a brief pause. "Then I can't guarantee anyone's safety. Not yours, not Marcus's, not even the children's. There are very powerful people involved in this, Doris. People who don't tolerate interference." I tried to keep my voice firm. "How do I know you won't kill us as soon as I hand over the children?" Tanisha laughed, an empty sound that made my skin crawl. "Do you really think I want to kill my own children? They're too valuable for that." "Valuable as merchandise," I replied bitterly. "Business is business, Doris. I have a debt to pay, and this is the only way. The downtown Atlanta Square. Tomorrow at noon. Come alone with Isaiah and Ava." The call ended. I stood there, trembling on the dark porch. The officer in the cruiser must have noticed my silhouette because she briefly flashed her headlight, a silent signal that she was vigilant. I went back inside and woke Marcus. He listened to my account of the call with a pale face. "I'm calling Detective Henderson immediately," he said. Detective Henderson arrived at Celeste's house less than an hour later, accompanied by 2 other undercover officers. We all sat in the kitchen while the children slept, unaware of the danger hanging over us. "This could be good," Detective Henderson said thoughtfully. "We can use this meeting to trap them." "It's too risky," I protested. "What if something goes wrong? What if the children get hurt?" "We won't take the real children," Detective Henderson explained. "We'll set a trap. You'll go to the agreed location, but with disguised federal agents instead of the children. We'll have teams positioned all over the square." Marcus nervously ran his hands through his hair. "What if they notice?" "That's why we need to be extremely careful with the planning," Detective Henderson said. "We need to make it convincing enough for them to approach, but we need to guarantee your safety." We discussed the details until dawn. The plan was risky, but it was our best chance to capture Tanisha and her accomplices. I would be the bait, pretending to have brought the children as demanded. When the sun finally rose, I was exhausted, but determined. As Detective Henderson and his colleagues left to organize the operation, I went to check on Isaiah and Ava, who were starting to wake up. "Good morning, Grandma," Isaiah murmured sleepily. "Are we going home today?" I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked his hair. "Not yet, honey. We're staying a few more days with Auntie Celeste." "But I want my other toys," Ava complained, hugging her doll. "Soon, my love. Soon." Marcus came into the room, forcing a smile for his children. His eyes met mine over the children's heads, a look of determination mixed with terror. The day passed slowly. Celeste kept the children entertained with games and stories, while Marcus and I received final instructions from Detective Henderson over the phone. At 11 o'clock in the morning, it was time to prepare. I dressed as I normally would to go out with my grandchildren. Jeans, a simple blouse, my hair pulled back. Detective Henderson had given me a tiny listening device hidden like a button on my blouse. Before leaving, I hugged Isaiah and Ava tighter than ever. "Grandma's going to take care of some things, and we'll be back soon," I promised, swallowing my tears. "Be good for Daddy and Auntie Celeste." In the disguised police vehicle heading toward the square, I felt the weight of everything at stake. 2 female officers disguised as Isaiah and Ava were next to me, dressed exactly as my grandchildren would be. "Are you all right, ma'am?" the officer driving asked. "Yes," I replied, though my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The square was relatively quiet for a weekday. A few mothers with children playing on the swings, elderly folks sitting on the benches, people rushing to work. Undercover FBI agents were strategically positioned. A popcorn vendor, a woman walking a dog, a man reading the newspaper. I sat on a bench in the center of the square, the 2 children beside me. It was 5 minutes to noon. "It's going to be okay," I whispered to myself. "It's going to work out." Exactly at noon, I saw Tanisha entering the square. She was elegant as always, hair perfectly done, dark sunglasses covering her eyes. Walking beside her was Tyrone, constantly looking around. My heart leaped when they approached. Tanisha stopped a few feet away, scrutinizing the children next to me. For one terrible moment, I thought she would realize they weren't the real Isaiah and Ava. "Doris," she said, her voice falsely sweet, "it's good you decided to be reasonable." "It's over, Tanisha," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the fear. "I know everything." She smiled, that smile that once seemed charming and now looked like the mask of a monster. "What do you think you know?" "I know about the trafficking, about the plan to sell Isaiah and Ava. We found the safe." I saw a flash of panic in her eyes before she could hide it. "Your imagination, Doris. You always had too fertile a mind. Now, children, come to Mommy." The children hesitated, according to instructions. Tyrone stepped forward, irritated. "Enough talk. Take them. We have to go. The buyer is waiting." At that moment, everything happened quickly. Detective Henderson and his agents emerged from everywhere. "Federal agents! Freeze!" Tyrone tried to run, but was tackled by 2 officers. Tanisha froze, her eyes wide with shock as handcuffs were put on her wrists. "You betrayed me!" she hissed as she was led away. "They won't let this go! You don't know who you're messing with!" Her words sent a chill down my spine. Even with Tanisha and Tyrone arrested, the threat wasn't over. There were others involved, more powerful, more dangerous people. Detective Henderson approached me as the other officers put Tanisha and Tyrone into cruisers. "You were very brave, Mrs. Sterling," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "We got them. Now we can track their trail to the heads of the operation." "And my family?" I asked, still trembling. "Are we safe?" "We'll keep you under protection until we're sure everyone involved has been captured," he guaranteed. "But you can't go home yet. I'm going to find a safe house." At the precinct, I met with Marcus. He hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his face. "It's over, Mama," he said. "You saved my kids." But as we waited to give our statements, watching Tanisha and Tyrone being interrogated in separate rooms, I knew it wasn't over. It was only the beginning of a long fight for justice, and more importantly, for the safety and future of Isaiah and Ava. 3 months passed since that day in the square. We were temporarily living in a safe house provided by the Witness Protection Program in a small town outside Columbia, South Carolina. Isaiah and Ava were enrolled in a local school under different names, and Marcus managed to get a remote job to support the family. The investigations continued. Through Tanisha and Tyrone, the police managed to unravel a significant part of the trafficking network that operated not only in the U.S., but across several states and countries. Several suspects were arrested, including an influential businessman who financed the operation. Tanisha refused to cooperate fully. The 2 times I was called to confront her, she looked at me with an hatred so intense I felt it could burn my skin. She claimed she was forced to participate in the scheme because of debts, but evidence showed years of conscious involvement. Tyrone, on the other hand, cracked under pressure and began informing on everyone involved in exchange for a reduced sentence. It was through him that we discovered the true extent of the horror. Dozens of children had already been trafficked by the group, sold for illegal adoptions, or even darker fates. Marcus was shattered. In the first few days after the arrests, he could barely get out of bed. How do you go on living when the person you loved, the mother of your children, turned out to be a monster? Slowly, however, he found the strength to move forward, mainly for Isaiah and Ava. The children still don't know the whole truth. How do you explain to children so young that their mother planned to sell them? For now, we only told them that Tanisha did something wrong and had to go away. They ask about her occasionally, especially Ava, who still cries at night calling for her mom. "When is Mommy coming back?" she asked me yesterday as I tucked her in. "I don't know, my love," I replied honestly, stroking her hair. "But Grandma and Daddy are here, and we love you more than anything in the world." Today is Sunday, and we're trying to establish new routines to create a new normal. Marcus is in the backyard with Isaiah, teaching him to ride his bike without training wheels. Ava is beside me in the kitchen, helping to make a chocolate cake, which mainly means licking the raw batter spoon. I look at my granddaughter, the chocolate smudge on her cheek, her small fingers kneading the dough, and I feel an overwhelming wave of love and protection. I think about what might have happened if I hadn't gone to the dry cleaners that day. If Mr. Wallace hadn't noticed the suspicious contents in Tanisha's coat. Sometimes fate works through the smallest details. A forgotten coat, an old dry cleaner's shop, an honest man who refused to stay silent. Small decisions that changed everything. The prosecutor told us that Tanisha and Tyrone would likely receive severe sentences. The evidence was overwhelming, and the case gained national notoriety, increasing pressure for justice. But he also warned us that the trial would be difficult, especially for Marcus, who would have to publicly confront his wife's betrayal. Detective Henderson, Marcus's friend, continued to visit us regularly, both professionally and for support. It was he who told me something I can't forget. "Mrs. Sterling, you did what many wouldn't have had the courage to do, face a horrible truth when it would have been easier to ignore it." I don't feel brave. I just did what any grandmother would do to protect her grandchildren. But I learned that sometimes courage isn't a grand, heroic gesture, but a series of small, difficult steps taken when all you want to do is run. Tonight, as Marcus and I sat on the porch after the children had fallen asleep, looking at the stars that seemed so bright in this small town, he took my hand. "Thank you, Mama," he said simply, "for saving my children when I was too blind to see the danger." I squeezed his hand. "We are family. We protect each other. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know how long we'll have to live in this limbo, away from our home, our friends, our former life. We don't know how the children will react when they are old enough to understand the whole truth. But I know that no matter how dark the night, the sun always rises again. And as long as we are together, Marcus, Isaiah, Ava, and I, we will find our way back to the light." This morning, as I tidied the borrowed dresser in the temporary bedroom, I found the wrinkled dry cleaning ticket, still in the pocket of the blouse I wore on that fateful day. A simple piece of paper that changed our lives forever. I kept it as a reminder, not of Tanisha's betrayal, but of Mr. Wallace's courage, our own resilience, and the fact that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to an opportunity to start over. Because that is what we are doing now, starting over. One day at a time, one laugh at a time, one new memory at a time. And in the end, that's all we can do. Keep going, protect the ones we love, and believe that better days are coming. Tanisha and Tyrone's trial began exactly 6 months after their arrest. The case had garnered national attention, and the courtroom was packed with reporters, human rights activists, and outraged citizens. Marcus and I sat together in the front row, squeezing each other's hands for strength. Thanks to Detective Henderson's efforts, the children did not have to attend, sparing them the trauma of seeing their mother handcuffed in the defendant's box. When Tanisha walked in, escorted by 2 guards, I barely recognized her. The time in custody had erased all the polish she once possessed. Her always immaculate hair was now lifeless. Her once radiant face was now marked by deep circles under her eyes. But her eyes, when they met mine, still burned with that same hatred. The prosecutor presented the case with relentless precision, laying out every horrible detail of the scheme. The photos of my grandchildren with the red circles were projected onto a large screen, causing the entire room to gasp in horror. The bank statements showing the millions in transfers, the purchased tickets, the fake passports. Then came the testimonies. Tyrone, seeking a reduced sentence, confessed everything, fully implicating Tanisha. He described how she was initially recruited as a money launderer for the organization, but soon realized she could profit much more by offering up her own children. She said it was perfect, he testified, avoiding looking at Tanisha. No one would suspect a mother. When it was my turn to testify, I felt as though I were carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I told about the coat, about the discovery at the dry cleaners, about our desperate flight to protect the children. My voice failed several times, but I managed to finish. Tanisha chose not to testify on the advice of her lawyer, but during the prosecution's closing argument, she turned and looked directly at Marcus and me. Her lips formed silent words that appeared to be, "This is not over." After 3 weeks of trial, the verdict was announced. Guilty on all counts. The sentence? 30 years for each, with no possibility of parole for the first 20. As we left the courthouse for the last time, Marcus stopped and took a deep breath. "It's over," he said. But Tanisha's words kept echoing in my mind. This is not over. A week after the trial, we received the news that we could finally leave the Witness Protection Program. With the main members of the network arrested and the case closed, the immediate danger had passed. It was time to rebuild our lives. Marcus decided we needed a completely fresh start. He sold the house he had shared with Tanisha and bought a small farmhouse on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, a quiet place where no one knew us, where we wouldn't be the family from that terrible trafficking case. The move happened quickly. Within a month, we were settled in our new home. The house wasn't big, but it had a spacious yard where Isaiah could play ball and Ava could play with her dolls. There was a small orchard in the back with apple and peach trees that promised fruit next season. Marcus found a job at a local company, and I started helping at my grandchildren's school, working as an aide in the library. Slowly, we began to meet our neighbors, make new friends, and establish new routines. The children adapted with the surprising resilience of youth. Isaiah joined the school's soccer team and was soon chattering about new friends. Ava, always more reserved, took a little longer, but eventually grew fond of her teacher and began bringing colorful drawings home every day. They still asked about their mother occasionally, but less frequently. One night, as Marcus was tucking Isaiah into bed, the boy asked directly, "Daddy, Mommy did something really bad, didn't she?" Marcus told me about the conversation later, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know what to say, Mama," he confessed. "How do I explain that to an 8-year-old? "With time," I replied, hugging him. "We'll explain it with time, when they can understand." A year passed, then 2. Life moved on. We celebrated birthdays, Christmases, and school graduations. Marcus met a music teacher at the children's school, Jasmine, a gentle, patient woman who entered our lives respectfully and without haste. At first I was apprehensive. How could we trust again? How could we be sure we wouldn't be bringing another danger into our lives? But Jasmine proved to be exactly what she seemed, a genuinely good person who loved my son and my grandchildren for who they were, with all the scars and baggage they carried. In our 3rd year in Asheville, Marcus and Jasmine married in a simple ceremony in our backyard. Isaiah, now 10 years old, was the proud junior groomsman in his first suit. Ava, at 8, tossed flower petals down the makeshift aisle, her pink dress swirling as she twirled. Watching my son smile again, seeing my grandchildren embrace Jasmine with genuine affection, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Maybe we had finally found our happy ending. Then the letter arrived. It came in a plain envelope with no return address, addressed to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. She gets out soon. She never forgot what you did. Get ready. My blood ran cold. Tanisha couldn't be getting out. Her sentence was 30 years, and only 3 had passed. But what if there had been a successful appeal? What if she had made some kind of deal? I didn't show the letter to Marcus. He was finally happy. He was finally moving on. How could I bring him back to that nightmare? Instead, I called Detective Henderson, who had remained in contact over the years. It's not possible, he guaranteed me after hearing about the letter. Tanisha is still serving her sentence in maximum security. This is probably just an attempt to scare you. But how did someone find our address? I asked, the fear evident in my voice. We were so careful. I'll investigate, he promised. In the meantime, increase security, install cameras, alarms, and keep me informed if you receive anything else. In the following days, we lived in a constant state of alert. Marcus noticed my worry and insisted until I showed him the letter. His face paled, and he immediately began taking action. He installed a complete security system, put new locks on all the doors and windows. He even bought a big dog, a German shepherd named Max, who quickly became Isaiah's best friend. 2 more weeks passed without incident. I started to wonder if Detective Henderson was right, if the letter was just an empty attempt to scare us, perhaps from a sympathizer of Tanisha or Tyrone who had discovered our whereabouts. Then, one Saturday morning, as I was fixing breakfast and the children were still asleep, the doorbell rang. Marcus and Jasmine had gone for a run, as they did every morning. I looked through the peephole, but didn't see anyone. Cautiously, I opened the door. There was no one there, only a small box on the ground. My instinct told me not to touch it, to call the police immediately, but before I could close the door, Max ran past me and began sniffing the box, wagging his tail happily. I picked it up carefully and took it to the kitchen. Inside, I found 2 small rag dolls that looked strangely like Isaiah and Ava. Both had red circles drawn around their faces and pins stuck in their chests. I dropped the box, horrified. I ran to check on the children, who were still sleeping peacefully. Then, with trembling hands, I called Detective Henderson. Within an hour, police were at our house. Detective Henderson arrived shortly after, having driven over 200 miles as soon as he received my call. "This is no joke," he said gravely, examining the dolls. "We're going to reinforce your security and investigate thoroughly." Marcus and Jasmine returned to find the house full of police. When I explained what had happened, Marcus made an immediate decision. "We need to get out of here right now." There was no arguing. Within a few hours, we packed the essentials and left the house that had been our home for the last 3 years. Detective Henderson took us to a secure police facility while the investigation continued. We spent a week in that sterile place, the children confused and scared. Marcus and Jasmine trying to maintain calm for them. I constantly blame myself. Maybe if I hadn't gone to that dry cleaner's, if I hadn't discovered Tanisha's plan, we would all be living in ignorant safety. Isaiah and Ava would have been taken, yes, but the rest of us would be safe in our illusion. Terrible, selfish thoughts that I banished as soon as they arose. No, discovering the truth was the only right thing to do. Even with all the suffering that came after, we saved 2 innocent lives. On the 8th day of our stay at the secure facility, Detective Henderson walked in with an expression I couldn't read. "We found who sent the dolls," he said, "and it wasn't Tanisha." "Then who?" Marcus asked, gripping Jasmine's hand tightly. "A woman named Monica Silva, Tyrone's sister. She was trying to scare you as revenge for her brother. There's no actual connection to Tanisha or a real plan to hurt them." I felt a relief so intense my legs gave way, and I had to sit down. "So, is it really over this time?" I asked. Detective Henderson nodded, a small smile finally appearing on his tired face. "It's over. Monica was arrested for threats and harassment. Tanisha is still in prison and has no communication with the outside world." That night, For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. When I woke up, I found Isaiah and Ava playing happily in the facility's small courtyard, as if the whole nightmare had never happened. "And now?" I asked Marcus as we watched the children. "Do we go back home?" He shook his head. "I think we need a new start again." Jasmine, who had stood firmly by our side through the entire crisis, suggested something unexpected. "My family owns a house on the coast of Georgia. It's been empty for years. We could move there, at least temporarily." And so, once again, we packed our lives and set off for a new destination. The house on the coast was older and smaller than our house in Asheville, but it had something we all desperately needed: peace. Located in a small fishing community near Savannah, Georgia, far from the big cities and the hustle, the house was just a few steps from the beach. For the first time in years, we didn't need to constantly look over our shoulders. The children could run freely on the sand, and the sound of the waves gradually washed the fear from our minds. Isaiah and Ava enrolled in the local school and quickly made new friends. Marcus managed to transfer his job to remote, and Jasmine started giving music lessons in the community. And I finally had time to breathe, to process everything we had gone through. One quiet afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching the ocean, and began to write our story, not for publication or sharing, but as a form of therapy, of accepting what happened and moving forward. And perhaps one day, when Isaiah and Ava were adults and ready to understand the whole truth, I could give them this record. Today, as I write these final pages, I look back and see how far we've come. The children are thriving. Isaiah is now 12 and captain of the school soccer team. Ava, 10, discovered a talent for painting and has her art hanging all over the house. Marcus and Jasmine are talking about having a baby, expanding our family that was once so brutally threatened. And I learned that life can deal us terrible blows, but it can also offer us extraordinary second chances. Sometimes, when I'm alone on the beach at sunset, I think of Tanisha. I think of the woman I knew, whom I loved like a daughter, and the woman she revealed herself to be. I still can't understand how someone could betray their own family in such a monstrous way. Maybe I never will understand, but I don't allow those thoughts to dominate my mind for long. Instead, I turn my gaze toward our illuminated house in the distance, where I know my family is waiting, a family that, despite everything it faced, found its way back to happiness. And it all began with a coat at the dry cleaners. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.